Hey guys, Sarak here, and today I'm going to bring you a deck using Runick. It is Runick Plunder Patrol. Now, Runick's been out of everyone's budget range for the best part of a year, but it's finally been reprinted. And what better way to get started by mixing it with another really cheap and popular deck in Plunder Patrol. So, before we get into the profile, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe to the video if you enjoy my content, and let's get into it. So we'll start with the Plunder Patrol monsters. We begin with 3 copies of Whitebeard. So the Plunder Patrol gimmick is that they can tag themselves into their extra deck monsters of attributes that your opponent controls or are in their graveyard. So they have some attribute changing things, and some of their monsters obviously have quick effects that allow them to do this. So Whitebeard, during your opponent's turn, you can special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your extra deck with the same attribute as a monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. Equip this card to it. If this card is sent from the hand or monster zone to the graveyard, you can activate this effect, special summon 1 Plunder Patrol monster from your deck except Whitebeard, and then it locks you into Plunder Patrol monsters. This is the best normal summon in the deck. It's a level 4 tuner, which is really important in the deck because it allows us to access Coral Dragon and then get into Jord using 2 hugins. We can also obviously get into Jord if we use Gary as well. It has the best go to the graveyard effect because it special summons from the deck, but remember it locks you into plunders after that, so make sure you've summoned all the Runicks you need to summon, and Coral Dragon if you're going that way beforehand. And then it has the quick effect tag out effect, so this is also fine to leave on the field if you need it in your opponent's turn. Our next 3 of is Golden Hair, the newest Plunder Patrol. This is another level 4 tuner. It can special summon itself from the hand by sending a Plunder Patrol monster from the hand or field to the graveyard. And then it can special summon itself from the graveyard by discarding a card, and then it can summon itself, and the graveyard summon locks you into Plunder Patrol monsters. This is really nice because it's the other tuner. It can summon itself for free, it can summon itself twice, which means it's really important for Link or Synchro plays because it can just continually bring itself back. It's not quite as strong as Whitebeard in isolation because it doesn't replace itself from the field and requires 2 discards to get maximum value out of it. Our final 3 of is 3 Black Eyes, the Plunder Patrol Sea Guide. Black Eyes can target a plunder monster in the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand, and add that monster back to your hand. Very nice recycling effect. Special summon itself doesn't require a normal summon, obviously it does require some graveyard setup to work, so it isn't the best if you draw it by itself, and then that summon effect locks you into plunders. If this card is sent from the hand or monster zone to the graveyard, you can target a plunder monster in your spell and trap zone and summon it in defense. So this allows you obviously to summon a Redbeard or a Whitebeard from your spell and trap zone to tag out again, or summon a Golden Hair or a Bluebeard to use as Synchro, Xyz, Link fodder. Just remember that you can't summon Blackbeard because it requires to summon in defense. We then have 2 copies of Bluebeard. Bluebeard can summon itself if you control a Plunder Patrol, and then if it goes from the hand or the monster zone to the graveyard, discard 1 and draw 1. So very nice hand sculpting. It's the best generic extender in the deck, so that's why we're running 2. And then finally we run 1 copy of Redbeard, the Plunder Patrol Matey. Redbeard has the same tag out effect as Whitebeard, which is really nice because it's a card you can just leave on the field for the opponent's turn. And then if it goes from the hand or monster zone to the graveyard, you can equip a Plunder Patrol monster with this card, so you can get the bonus effects of those Plunder Patrol monsters. We then round out the monster lineup with 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So, for the Runicks, we'll begin with our 2 copies of Runick Fountain. Runick Fountain is the field spell, it's searchable by hugin, and you can activate Runick quick play spell cards from your hand during your opponent's turn, which means we don't lose to back row removal, so we don't have to set them, we can bluff having them. And then once per turn, if you activate a Runick quick play spell card, target 3 Runick quick play spell cards in your graveyard, place them on the bottom of your deck and draw that number of cards. Very strong, enabling you to constantly filter your hand and replace all the cards in your hand, so we want to cycle through as many Runick cards in a turn as we can, so we can essentially continually draw 2 or 3 cards each turn. Very important, we want to have this field spell up most of the time, which is why we don't play as many copies of the Plunder Patrol field spell, because this is our main field spell. For the Runick quick play spells themselves, we begin with 3 copies of Runick Tip. Runick Tip, so all the Runick quick play spells have the effect where they can either fusion summon a Runick monster and summon it to the extra monster zone. Sorry, they don't fusion summon, they just summon it to the extra monster zone. Or they can do something else and banish a certain number of cards from your opponent's deck. If you activate a Runick card, you will skip your next battle phase after their activation. So Tip allows you to search a Runick card from your deck to your hand, except itself. They're all quick plays, so we want to use as many of them outside of the main phase as possible to avoid getting hit by Droll and Blackbeard. So Runick Tip is the searcher. We then have 4 other Runick quick play spells. We have 3 copies of Runick Freezing Curses, which is an effect monster negate. We have 3 copies of Runick Flashing Fire, which destroys a special summoned monster and banishes 2. We have 3 copies of Runick Destruction, which destroys spell and traps and banishes 4. And then we have 3 copies of Runick Slumber, which prevents destruction by battle or card effect and banishes 3. Now generally Slumber is the best one in your turn, especially going first, because we can activate it on any card, even if they don't use anything to destroy it, because we can use it to just get an extra card off Runick Fountain. So that's the Runick spells. For our final 2 Plunder Patrol cards, we play 1 copy of Plunder Patrol Shipyard, which is the field spell for Plunder Patrol, which gives all monsters 500 attack for each Plunder Patrol in your spell and trap zone, or all Plunder Patrol monsters. And then you can discard a card to search a Plunder Patrol card, which can be really, really important because we need to have plunders in our hand. And then if it's in the graveyard, you can target a Plunder Patrol card in your spell and trap zone, set this card, and return that target to the hand. It's useful for OTKing. That doesn't happen quite as much because we're playing the Runick engine, so we don't always use our battle phase. It's very good for finding pieces of the puzzle. It can put an extra Runick in the graveyard to return it with Fountain later. And it can also bring itself back if we need to. But most of the time we're going to have Fountain in the field spell zone, which is why we only play 1 of this. And then we have 1 Plunder Patrol Booty, where we can declare an attribute, target a monster our opponent controls, and change its attribute to that declared one, and then shuffle a Plunder monster from our graveyard into the deck or special summon it. So this gives us some recursion, some recycling, and very importantly, attribute changing for decks that rely on 1 or 2 attributes so we can access our full extent of our extra deck. We then finish off the main deck with 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. We pretty much always have Fiend monsters on the board, and the vast majority of our other cards we don't need outside of turn 1. So we're usually going through our Runick Fusion monsters in turn 1, making our Plunder board, and then we can set this and use the Runick cards and this to control the game until we win. And then we're finishing off with 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, probably the best single trap card in the game. Targeted effect negation, good going first or second, and still pretty cheap for how good and how effective it is in every single deck. If you can't afford the slightly extra cost for Infinite Impermanences, Effect Veiler is a good substitute. So let's get on to the extra deck. We'll begin with our plunders. We have 3 copies of Blackbeard, the Plunder Patrol Captain, 2 monsters including a Plunder Patrol, quick effect, target an effect monster you control, summon 1 Plunder monster from your extra deck with the same attribute as your monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, equip that target to it, and then draw 1 card. So this can tag into any of the Plunder extra decks, it can target itself or it can target any other Plunder, and then it gives you a card draw as well. Be careful because that obviously means this effect can be ashed, but it's by far the easiest way of getting plunders out of the extra deck onto the field. So most of our boards will end with this card. We then have our other plunders. We have 2 Plunder Patrol Ship Lease. Lease can special summon a Plunder Patrol monster from your hand or face up spell and trap zone during the main phase. When your opponent activates a monster effect, discard a Plunder Patrol card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And then if this card is equipped with a Plunder Patrol, add 1 Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand. So they all have an effect where you have to discard a Plunder card, and then if they're equipped with something, you get a bonus. Okay, so Lease is the one we will end on most because it's a monster negate, so it's the most generic. We have 2 copies of Bran. Bran is the Synchro. It's an 8-star Synchro. Fiend monsters gain 500 attack. You can discard a Plunder, target a spell trap your opponent controls, banish it, and then search a Plunder Patrol monster. This is a quick effect if this card is equipped with a Plunder Patrol card. Mowerk. 2 level 4 monsters, discard a plunder, target an effect monster your opponent controls, banish it, and then add a Plunder Patrol spell trap. This is a quick effect if this card is equipped with a Plunder Patrol card, and then if a Plunder Patrol would be destroyed by battle or card effect, detach a material from this card instead. So Moat can give you some protection if you make it the normal way of making an Xyz monster. 1 copy of Plunder Patrol ship Jord. Jord's Pendulum effect can declare 1 attribute, return this card to the extra deck, and summon a Plunder token with any attribute with the attribute you declared. Okay, so that's really important because you're normally going to be calling light from this, so you can make a turn 1 lease. And then its monster effect, if your opponent summons a monster, except during the damage step, add 1 Plunder Patrol card from your deck to your hand. Then if this card is equipped with a plunder, you can special summon a plunder from your deck, so this gives you massive card advantage. And then you can target a plunder in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and place this card in your pendulum zone. Most of your turn 1 combos will go through this to give your opponent a token, which allows you to make a copy of Lys or Moak or Bran, depending on what you need. The token is also really, really good with Rivalry of Warlords because it's a fiend, and therefore if your opponent's not playing fiends, they have to somehow get rid of the token before they can do anything. So that's it for the Plunder Patrol monsters. For our Runick monsters, we're playing 2 copies of Hugin. This is level 2. If it's special summoned, discard a card, search the Runick field spell. If another card you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, banish this card you control instead. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, return this card to the extra deck. So it always goes back to the extra deck unless we use it for a summon material. It searches as the field spell, which is the main reason we play it. And it's a level 2, which means we can synchro into Coral Dragon with it. 1 copy of Munin the Runick Wings. If it's special summoned, discard a card, add 1 Runick continuous spell. That effect's not relevant. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Runick card, banish this card you control, negate the activation, destroy that card so it can protect your Runick Fountain. And then, once per turn during the end phase, gain 1,000 life points. This is here for time. It's very easy to put this out and just pass the turn, gain 1,000 and win in time that way. And then we play 1 Jerry the Runick Fangs. This is a level 4, which is useful for synchro and Xyz plays. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. If it's special summoned from the extra deck, target a non-quick play Runick spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand so it can get us back our copy of Fountain if it dies to a Harpy's Feather Duster. And then when this card is destroyed by battle, target 1 card on the field and destroy it. So sometimes we may just need to use this to stop our opponent from killing us. Okay, but mainly because it's a level 4 and it can get us back Fountain. To round out the extra deck, we have a copy of Coral Dragon. So Coral Dragon can discard a card, target 1 card your opponent controls, destroy it, and if its synchro summon card goes from the field to the graveyard, draw a card. This is mainly in here because it's a level 6 synchro tuner, which is really important for synchro climbing with Hugin plus a Plunder Patrol tuner. So that is Plunder Patrol Runick. I hope you enjoyed that. The deck list will be on the screen now, along with the total price of the cards. And I hope you enjoyed that deck profile. This deck is pretty much full power. And I will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.